Me and my nearly 8-year-old son are about to build the most expensive computer I've ever owned in my life. He has zero experience. I'm a Mac user, and the last PC I built was back when keyboards and mice used PS2 connectors, so it's been a very, very long time. But my kid is starting to get into gaming in a big way now. I also play Fortnite on my Xbox every night with my friends, and I have this huge 240Hz 57-inch ultra-wide gaming monitor that is just begging to be connected to a proper gaming PC instead of the current Mac Studio. Now I'll have everything timestamped down below, and if you're building yours for the first time, I hope you'll be able to use this as a guide when putting yours together, because as I've discovered, it's taken me quite a while to get my head around all of the various options you have. Oh, and thank you to Newegg who is sponsoring this video. And there'll be links down below where you can pick up theirs and all of the other parts featured in this video. So the first part that you'll want to start with is, of course, the motherboard. And I went with the MSI Edge Z790 board here. Now you'll notice this is very, very white. It's the kind of look that I'm going for with this build. Super clean, as much of the components are white where possible. And you'd think you start by putting this into the case, but before you do that, it's better and easier to do a couple of things. Now first, install the processor. And for the processor, literally minutes before I started to film this video, Intel released their 14th generation chips. But we got it. So this is the Intel i9-14900K CPU. It is one of the fastest CPUs available, and it's one of the most important parts to a build because it drives the whole machine. But before I install this into the motherboard, shout out to Random Frank P, who I saw mentioned this bracket in one of his videos. Now what you do is you unscrew the standard metal bracket on the motherboard, drop the CPU in, and then screw down this replacement bracket on top. And by doing this, tests show that it drops the temperature of your CPU by a few degrees, which when building a powerful PC like this, and also with the i9-14900K, which runs at a fairly high temperature as it is well worth it for the low cost of one of these brackets. As you can see, I did have some help here. He hasn't got bored yet. He's just super excited to play some Minecraft, even though he already has it on a console. So now we have the CPU installed. Next up is installing the memory DIMMs. I went for 64 gig of Corsair Vengeance DDR5 at 5200 megahertz. And I went with the regular white sticks of memory without going too overboard with the whole kind of RGB thing with this build. Now, since there are only 2 DIMMs and after some RTFM, these things need to be installed in DIMM slots A2 and B2. And finally, before we install the motherboard into the case, now is also the time where we can fit any storage. So we've got our M2 storage here, and I've gone with 3 different chips here. Now, firstly, we have the 1 terabyte Samsung 990 Pro drive, which is going to run Windows. Now, this one is going to slot into slot 1 on the motherboard. So it's just a case of unscrewing the thermal cover, removing the plastic cover on the thermal stuff here, slotting the chip in, and just rotate the screw to secure the chip in. Then you can remove the plastic cover on the top part and then screw the plate back down, and that will get all the thermals kind of nicely insulated to keep all the heat away from the chip. Next up, we have another 1 terabyte, this time from Next Storage. Now, these are both super fast SSD drives, which can read and write over 6,000 megabytes per second, which is crazy fast. So I'm going to use this one to hold all of my data. Now, this one I didn't actually realize comes with a heatsink attached, so we had to unscrew the heatsink, remove the thermal coatings that were already on there, since of course our motherboard already has some of this built into the plates that are screwed down on top of the M2 storage. And then we have a 4 terabyte Western Digital M2 drive, which is going to hopefully, I say hopefully, hold all of my game installs, which is probably like only 4 versions of Call of Duty, I guess. So now all of those parts have been fitted, we can install the board itself and everything we've installed into the case. And for the case, I chose the Fractal Torrent case. Now, it is a relatively old case, it's a couple of years old, but from all of the research that I did around this case, this one consistently scored high in terms of cooling. It also had great reviews, and of course, it fits our aesthetic for this build. There are some built-in fans already. It has a ton of space in there for cable management and space for if I ever want to swap parts out of this PC, such as maybe swapping out the graphics card or adding even more storage. But before I do anything, I removed all of the panels from the top, the front, and the 2 side panels, so I have access to everything. With the case, you get all of the fittings needed to attach the board to the case, but it is just a case of lining up the board with the fixings on the back and then screwing in each part of the board into the case. All right, now we're starting to look like a real PC. Time to connect all of the wires from the case to the motherboard. Now, these are things like the top audio, the USB, power and reset switches, along with some of the fans as well. Now, there are a few tweaks we need to make to the case. Now, I'm using a CPU cooler, and with this case, it will only fit in the front part. So I'm going to remove the fans from the front and replace them with the CPU cooler. I'm also going to remove one of the fans from the bottom so there's enough space to put the cooler in, though I later actually realized that I could fit the 2 larger fans at the bottom instead, so later on I swapped these out again. But next up, I'm going to install the power supply into the case. This is the MSI AI 1300P, which is slightly overkill for this build, but I wanted to make sure that if I did want to ever upgrade or swap out parts, then I wouldn't need to worry about changing the power supply too. And the nice thing about this is that it's modular, so you can just connect up the parts you need without having a ton of wires trailing around and hanging into the case, making it just all messy looking. But with that now fitted, now we get to fit the cooler onto the CPU. And I went with the Kraken Elite from NZXT, and this is where I thought I kind of messed up, because in the box you get a bracket which goes onto the back of the motherboard, which the cooler then mounts onto. But thankfully, this case has a cutout for behind the CPU, which means I could just slot the bracket right on from behind, attach some screws, and then attach the cooler. Another good thing here is that there's already thermal paste on the cooler itself, so you don't need to worry about applying thermal paste and figuring out what's the right amount to add and, getting it all perfect and everything. You can just attach this cooler and be done with it. The fans also then need screwing into the case, and this combined with the bracket we fitted will do the absolute best job at keeping our CPU as cool as possible. And then finally, the most expensive component to fit in this whole PC, and that is the GPU, the whole graphics card. This is the ASRock 7900 XTX. I specifically ordered this card because, well, firstly, because it's white, so it fits our build and the whole aesthetic, but it is also, at least at time of making this video, the only card on the market that can actually run my Samsung 57-inch G9 Neo screen at full native resolution and at the full 240 Hz because it has HDMI and DisplayPort 2.1 ports on the back of the card. I really hope that's true. I really hope it can drive that screen to its fullest potential. We'll find out if that's true when I boot this thing up. But to finish up, there is a support bracket that came with the case to install, which holds the graphics card up so it doesn't kind of sag over time. We also need to hook up the power to the card, and the only thing to do now is tidy up all of the messy cabling and put the panels back on the case. And here it is, my completed build, which I'm pretty pleased with. I think the only minor things I want to improve are to swap out the stock power cables, the black power cables, for some white ones from Cable Mod, which I have ordered, but they are going to take between like 2 to 4 weeks to get here. And the only thing I'm missing from this kind of gaming PC setup is keyboard, a mouse, and a gamepad. So if you have any recommendations on the best ones to buy, let me know down below. But I'm going to go away now and start testing this build on that 57-inch G9 ultrawide screen. And I'm going to post a video soon on how it performs in various games, so make sure you subscribe to catch that video. Maybe comment down below if there's any specific games you want to see covered in that video. Huge thanks to Newegg for sponsoring this video. Links again will be down below, all of those and all the parts featured in this video. But until next time, thanks for watching.